Zap, Nitro, Gemini, Lace, Sunny, Malibu. No, believe it or not, I'm not finally having a stroke. Those are all names of the original 6 gladiators from American Gladiators. You can just smell the 80s, can't you? If you're not familiar with American Gladiators, and frankly I don't know how that's possible seeing how you clicked on this video, and I'm assuming it's still the 21st century when you're watching this, well, go to Wikipedia or something. You could really expect me to explain everything around here? Alright, fine. So let me set the scene a little bit. In 1989, the WWE, WWF at the time, was running pretty hot with the likes of Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and the Ultimate Warrior, and for some strange reason, bodybuilding had gotten pretty popular as well. I'm not sure if it was all the steroids going around, or perhaps people wanting to look like Arnold, but the entertainment market was ripe for another show with some larger-than-life stars. And hey, game shows are always fun, just ask ABC every summer. So someone at the Samuel Goldwyn Company had the great idea to have an athletic game show with some guys and girls who look like professional wrestlers, but have all the competition for real. I can almost imagine a coked-up producer saying, hey, I got it. You know that loudmouth ex-jock at the gym who's always saying, I could take that guy? Yeah, well, this is the show for him. Just as a side note for legal purposes, I have no idea if cocaine was involved in the production of American Gladiators. But it's possible. Anyway, after a slightly auspicious, aka low budget beginning to the first season, American Gladiators took off like wildfire and was everywhere from 1990 to 1992 or so. The show continued until 1996, and as all shows do, died a slow death as people moved on to newer things, but remained memorable enough to get a kids version, and in 2008 a full reboot with, you guessed, Hulk Hogan as host. American Gladiators also inspired other similar shows like Battle Dome and Dwayne Johnson's recent production The Titan Games, along with frequent mentions and guest appearances over the years in other television shows. Due to its massive popularity in the early 90s, of course, there had to be a video game made for it, and if there's one thing the 8 and 16-bit era was all about, it was licensed properties. Granted, there's still a lot of licensed titles to this day, but it definitely feels like there was more original content now, just due to the fact that, in a lot of cases, video games are the subject material. Oh, and if someone wants to statistically prove me wrong, go right ahead and leave a comment with the numbers. I'm actually interested to know. But there's no way I'm trying to take the time to try to figure it out myself. So, today, on Zilog and Moto, we're taking a look at the Genesis version of American Gladiators, which was released in 1992. The previous year, an American Gladiators game was released for the NES, and this game definitely diverges from that one. I'm not exactly sure how well the NES version did, but it definitely took some artistic liberties with the events on the show. But while the Genesis and later the SNES versions were more accurate to the show, that doesn't mean they were good games. Yeah, this is going to be one of those reviews. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the package. Here's American Gladiators. As you can see, the case is in pretty good shape, with no tears or damage to the plastic. Hang tabs intact at the top. And it seems like the last few games have had an intact hang tab, so that's nice. The cover is a nice glamour shot of the Gladiators from Season 2, with a listing of the different events on the side. Get that a little closer there so you can see that. And I actually like this cover, but it seems a little off-center. See how it's kind of skinny over here and wide over here? It's a minor thing, but you know, it just seems like I don't see why they didn't catch that. As we flip it over to the back, you'll see some weird glue tape residue. If you look really close, it's especially bad up top here. I don't know what's up with that. I've scraped off most of it. No idea why it would be on here. There's nothing this case needs to be glued or taped or whatever. It's just one of those strange things you'll find with games from 28 years ago. Wow, I'm old. Anyway, on the back, there's a nice summary of the game, which again lists the different events, right here in the middle here. And then also the names of all the gladiators that are featured in the game. There's also 4 relatively nice quality screenshots of action during the events, and I gotta say, they picked 4 good action shots that make the game look really appealing. I could totally see a kid that was enamored with the TV show back in '92 being all over his parents to get this based on the package. Last thing to mention, if you look in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see here where it says 8 players. Now, obviously, there's no 8-player adapter for the Genesis. So 8 players means you'll be passing the controller around and doing a lot of waiting while other players take their turns. I don't know why they thought people would want to have that as an option. I mean, I guess it's kind of cool. I mean, what other game could you say technically supports 8 players that doesn't involve a LAN and multiple consoles? It's supposedly, when you get to that section in the manual, it says it actually supports 16 players, 8 men and women. But I haven't tested that out, and I doubt any sane person would. As we open the case, you'll see the cartridge and manual are both in great looking shape. I'm assuming this game didn't get played a whole lot, and there's a reason for that beyond the condition, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. Along with the manual, there's also a separate epilepsy warning sheet that's included, and I'm kind of surprised this got added in. Usually this is just a note in the manual about epilepsy, and I wonder if Game Tech just screwed up and forgot to put it in there, so they had to have the separate sheet added. The manual is actually pretty great, and I'm not sure how it could be any better, other than possibly being in color, but as we all know, Sega doesn't do color manuals. There are more than a few screenshots with diagrams, like here, as to how to play the different events. And each of the events are explained in pretty good detail. Definitely as much as detail as there can be, because some of the events are pretty simple. There's even a nice section that has bios toward the back here of the 10 gladiators. You see Gemini and Nitro and Turbo and Ice and, blah, blah, blah. Along with pictures and physical stats and everything. So definitely something a kid would want to see. So for the most part, Game Tech got the package right. Let's see if they put as much effort into the game itself. Hint, they did not. If you've never seen an episode of American Gladiators, well, what are you doing? I mean, go to YouTube or, go sign up for the SI Network. Go watch one. But anyway, let me sum up how it goes for you. 2 men and 2 women compete in 6 events to score points, with the men competing against themselves and the male gladiators, and the women doing the same on their side. At the end of the 6 events, after an obstacle course called the Eliminator, the man and the woman with the most points wins. Later on, they would stagger the Eliminator with the player that was ahead on points getting a head start, based on how much they were ahead by, resulting in a race to the finish of the course that would leave no doubt as to who won. But at this point in the show, around Season 2, they hadn't gotten there yet. Over the course of the season, the winners of all these episodes, and sometimes the high-scoring losers, would work their way through a single elimination tournament to determine the grand champion who would win the lion's share of the prizes. American Gladiators, the video game, captures that base format. You can choose to compete with as many men or women as you like, up to 8, and you'll be placed in an 8-person single elimination bracket, with any players not chosen to be controlled by humans, assigned to be simulated by the computer instead. So far, the physical package of the game is pretty solid, and the framework of the game mirroring the TV show is intact. You'd think things are heading in a positive direction, right? Well, strap in, because this game is about to go off a cliff like Paul Rudd's movie clips on Conan. And if you don't get that reference, definitely go look that up on YouTube. That's more important than looking up American Gladiators. Seriously. And then, come back. You'll thank me. After entering your player's name, the bracket is shown, and you're off to a screen introing the first event, called the Assault, and the gladiator that you're facing, while music plays in the background. Quick note, that music that's playing in the background, it's not a bad song, and actually has some pretty good synth action, but it's also the only song in the game. That's right, the entire time you waste playing American Gladiators, you will hear this song over and over and over again. No song is that good. Also, take note of the American Gladiators logo on this informational screen. It seems like they try to do some weird texturing to it, and it just looks strange. I don't know why they couldn't just bitmap the logo. It's only got 3 colors. And as we saw last week with Joe Montana, the Genesis can have some great looking static images. And these are issues before we even start playing the first event. Okay, well maybe they saved resources that would have been spent on music and static graphics and put it towards actual game events. Yeah? No. The assault starts, and you see a top-down view of the arena with your player in the grid-based floor and the first few stations your player can run to. I apologize, I could probably explain what the assault is. In the assault, your player has 5 safety stations that you have to run to in order. At each of these safety stations, there's a different projectile weapon that you will fire at a target behind the gladiator, who is standing at the end of the arena firing tennis balls via an air cannon at the player. The goal of the assault is for the player to hit that target before they are hit by the gladiator, or make it to the end of the course if they can't hit the target, which is entirely possible due to the abysmal way targeting is set up. For each of the weapons, after you pick them up at the station, a crosshair will appear at the top right of the screen. Your targeting reticule will by default move to the bottom left, and your goal, I think, is to try to move the reticule to the middle of the target and press the shoot button, which will in theory hit the target behind the gladiator. The target actually has 2 sections, a bullseye worth 10 points and the rest worth 5. But it might as well be worth just 5 because you're not hitting that bullseye, ever. You know why? Because the target doesn't actually appear in the crosshair. It's just a blank box. So the player has to guess about when the reticule is in the middle and go for it. Also, in the actual show, this sort of thing gets easier the closer you get to the end of the course because, you are closer, but no matter which safety station you're at in the game, the reticule moves at the same speed. Oh, and did I mention the graphics are absolute crap and probably could have been done on the Master System? Ugh, let's move on. The next event is the Joust. Your player will be on a raised pedestal next to a gladiator on the same height pedestal, and you'll each have pugil sticks that you will use to attempt to beat the crap out of each other. On the actual show, the goal is to knock the other person off the pedestal. And that might have been possible in this game, I don't know. But in reality, what happens is that you and the gladiator both have life bars, and whoever has their life bar drained first is knocked out. The Joust is notable for 2 things. It's the only place in the game where you can tell that your player is either male or female, and this event has the best graphics in the game, with the only representation of what I would call 16-bit quality. However, graphics aren't everything, and I found you can get an easy win just by moving all the way forward on your pedestal and holding down up and right in the B button, which just does a constant barrage of headshots. The computer just has no answer for it. On to the next event, which is the wall. And we're back to the same crappy, almost stick figure graphics with small sprites that could have been done on the Master System. You view your character and your competitor from behind, and the entire event consists of you rapidly hitting the B button, while moving up and across a wall on a marked path of handholds that are just more or less black dots. The goal is to beat your opponent up the wall and go fast enough to not be dragged off the wall by a gladiator that looks exactly like you but in a different colored outfit. Sometimes you'll get stuck when climbing the wall, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it, so you just keep hitting the B button and pressing the direction you want to go, and hopefully you move past it. Speaking of moving past, let's move past this event. The next event is Atmosphere. Atmosphere consists of your character and your opponent in red and blue metal spheres, think giant hamster balls, rolling across the ground of the arena to land in the center of one of 4 pods for 1 second before moving on to the next pod. At the same time, there are 2 gladiators in gray spheres that are rolling around the arena to attempt to block you from doing so. Atmosphere is probably the most well done of all the events, and the animation on the metal spheres is actually kind of nice. However, the rest of the arena looks like the usual 8-bit environment, and once you get into the center of one of the pods, if you run out of momentum, it's difficult to start moving again. Granted, that's similar to how the event plays out in real life, but it still feels clunky, and it would have been nice if they'd added the ability to hit a button to have your character boost around the arena that would have been used in situations like this, and maybe even a stamina bar to where if you used up your boost, then you would get stuck like that. But that's far too much for this game. Fun side note, defunct video game magazine GamePro and Adidas both get mentions in the wall advertising in this event. I'd make a joke about GamePro here, but everyone that lived through that era knows they've sucked as bad as this game, so it's actually pretty fitting they get a mention. Adidas, however, should probably be lawyering up. The final event to gain points before the Eliminator is Powerball. We're back to the crappy overhead view from the Assault, except now the arena floor is laid out with 4 gold canisters in the corners of the square, and one in the center of that square, with end zones to the opposite ends of the square. The game is played by grabbing a ball from a receptacle that's placed in each end zone by pressing B, running into the square up next to one of those other canisters, and pressing B again to deposit the ball. While this is going on, there are, supposed to be 3, gladiators running around blocking you from doing this, especially trying to keep you from the center canister, because that one is worth 2 points, rather than just 1 in the corners. All that sounds simple enough, right? Well, to pick up or drop off a ball, you have to be standing right next to the receptacle canister, and pressing B while pressing towards it. If you're off by even a little bit, either you won't pick up the ball to begin with, or when attempting to score a goal, you'll get a message on screen that you missed the target, even though you were standing right next to it and no gladiator was around. Also, there's no visual indicator that you're actually carrying one of the balls, other than when you pick it up, so you could potentially be running around without a ball and not even realize it. Finally, you have to alternate end zones that you pick up balls from, and it's quite easy to get caught up in what's going on and forget which is the next end zone you have to visit, wasting more time as the computer opponents hum along and usually beat the pants off you. If you manage to waste 10 minutes of your life getting through those 5 events, seriously, this game goes pretty quick, you will end up in the Eliminator, the end of game obstacle course, where your goal is to finish as quickly as possible. If you finish first and were ahead on points, you automatically win the entire event and go on to the next round. But if you lose and were ahead of points before, you can still win as long as you don't lose by too much. When facing the computer, this is probably the best possible goal. I've beat the computer a few times, but it does seem like the further you get in the tournament, the better the computer is at the event. Without describing the on-screen action, here's what you have to do to get through the Eliminator. 1. Alternate hitting A and C rapidly. 2. Alternate hitting A and C rapidly. 3. Alternate hitting A and C rapidly, but pause occasionally to avoid punching bags. 4. Alternate hitting A and C rapidly. 5. Hit B pretty much whenever you want, but it'll be best to wait until you're in a red zone. 6. Alternate hitting A and C rapidly, except pausing to hit B to jump over hurdles. And finally, alternate hitting A and C rapidly. Now, I'm going to ask, does any of that sound like fun to you? Because it sure as hell doesn't to me. The graphics are especially terrible for this segment, with the game taking a split-screen horizontal approach, so that you can see where you are in the course in comparison to your competitor. But both you and your competitor have the most herky-jerky animation while moving through the course I think I've ever seen. Just super stiff. It almost seems as if they're having seizures the entire event, and who knows, maybe that's why this game came with that extra seizure warning sheet. The hurdle section? Forget it. Just run straight through and don't bother trying to hit B. There's no point. In the TV show, players would be docked time for knocking down the hurdles, but you'll lose far more time here than trying to get over them properly. So it's best just to pretend your name is Jerome Bettis and do your best pulling a china shop at the end of the run. At the end of the Eliminator, if
If you lose, you'll briefly see your score and then abruptly be dumped back to the Sega screen. If you win, you'll see that same score screen and then be sent back to the tournament ladder where the computer simulates any events with other computer players, and then you'll get to go through this hell again against the next random competitor. If this match was the final and you won, after seeing your score, you'll see a quick screen with some bare text that announces you as the grand champion, and then you're abruptly dumped back to the Sega screen. No end credits, no special splash screen, nothing. I don't know, but I kind of think the player who loses in the first round is actually the winner here. Or in the words of the Immortal War Games, the only way to win is not to play. So, based on all this, and I can't believe how long this stupid review was, I'm giving American Gladiators 0 stars. Yes, 0. The only good thing about this game I can say is it appears functional for the most part, but I did have one game where halfway through the computer opponent somehow warped to 50 points and then completely dropped out of the rest of the game, switching to 0 points and no character movement. And then finally crashing back to the Sega screen at the end of the Eliminator. But I'm blaming that on dirty cartridge contacts. I had to really sit and think about whether this game was the same level of risk at 1 star or somehow worse, and I finally decided that while both games are technically accurate but cheaply made translations of their source material, American Gladiators is simply no fun and more of a button-mashing chore than a game. There's 0 reason to give this game a second look, and actual fans of the show should avoid it like the plague. The only reason to own it is if you're going for a full Genesis collection, and in that case, pop it in once, make sure it boots, and then seal it back up. Don't even waste 10 seconds of your life on this game.
Ooh, that was something. Kind of knew when I started this channel that there are going to be a few of these, and my hope was that the absolute 0 star bombs would be balanced out by the few 5-star quality games. I think that's accurate. Just know that I gave up a few days of my life doing this review, so that you never would have to experience this trash for yourself. You're welcome. Tune in next week as we delve back into the Master System and take a look at one of the oldest games available for the system in the United States. And remember, whatever you play, have fun, and be excellent to each other. Later.